Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this latest narration of the web series Forgotten Dungeon. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description. As always, I hope that you enjoy. Chapter 87.5, Honor Above Duty. Etheniel Kingwind, leader of the Theocracy Scouting Triad. Etheniel, to friends Ethan, yawned in a way unbecoming of an elven warrior, or scout in this case. Still, he couldn't be asked to maintain decorum. In the wastes, the only other intelligent beings were his companions. They wouldn't judge. And the ants squirming below, he supposed. Some Theocracy scholars argued that humans, hybrids, and similar lesser life forms counted as sentient beings. Hogwash, in his humble opinion. Not only did they only live absurdly short lives, but their thoughts were limited to food, sleep, and sex. These were base instincts, those of dirty, filthy animals. Blech. He usually wasn't this philosophical, but the boredom was a formidable foe, especially in this iron-forsaken world. Etheniel squirmed under the material, the greys and browns of the wasteland faithfully recreated on the drab surfaces of his scouting nest. It was a completely mundane thing, without a speck of magic, but the scout's safety was built in such a simple precautions, it didn't mean that the elf liked staring at the village below for hours on end. Still, orders were orders. Even if they sent his team away on a goose chase, Exultant Maiden Eve had asked for troops to be dispatched, and the High Command was happy to fulfill that request, especially since the girl had escaped enslavement. It was only proper to watch over Gaynard Princess, who managed to free her. The command sent his elite team, a triad comprised of a scout, mage, and warrior trained in survival skills and taught by eldest elves. Their mentors were those of the chosen who still clung to life, a few of those faithful who managed to endure the abominant, those who saw their god struck from the sky because of the hubris of the other divines. Ion, the light of the harsh master, but one they chose willingly. They were proud of his folk, proud of his work under his banner to better this world. Seeing the deity of justice destroyed, simply because it remained true to its ideals, should have broken the burgeoning theocracy. Instead, it made Etheniel's brethren stronger. The nation of light guarded the few remaining pieces of divinity they managed to save, hoping against hope that their burning faith would resurrect their benefactor. With that came a sense of duty, present even in the simplest worker, not to mention the warriors of the front lines of the never-ending war. So despite their objections, he and his fellow scouts were observing a little city-state called Silver Oasis. Truly, calling it a city was a bit too lenient, but it wasn't a village either. Not to mention, it didn't roll out the tongue the same way. It was run by a former Blue Flame noble, one much divorced from the Gaynor Kingdom's standard societal norms, and that was what made observing him so interesting. The rest was the droll duty of checking on the maiden savior since she decided to stay in this place. The oasis had once had a freshly minted dungeon, which a certain haughty princess then destroyed. Etheniel huffed. Half-breeds were getting uppity with their interference. The elves weren't as reverential and thankful as the other sentients for the murder holes God sprinkled on the remaining uncorrupted landmass, but the theocracy recognized their inherent value, as did the scout. Any resource site was a blessing in this lifeless world, no matter if the tithe for its boons had to be paid in blood or gold. While the oasis had been a part of Gaynor Kingdom's territory when the destruction happened, it still stung that the lesser kin had trashed its underground zone so thoroughly. Calling its core an abomination was no excuse for what they had done. The only ones that couldn't be forgiven were the undead, after all. And while it was said that the homunculi used by the dungeon skirted the line of right and wrong, it still wasn't enough to purge its halls. Not to mention that their people invented many tools that allowed them to meddle with what the dungeon produced, and which monsters were created to guard their halls. And there was also a bigger stick for those cores stubborn enough to resist these suggestions. All in all, it was a waste. The destruction, the arrogance, the lack of inner light these wretched half-elves demonstrated. A proper elf knew what duty was, what had to be swallowed for the theocracy to prosper, for the world to survive. Uncountable years of training, sacrifice, and knowledge were stuffed into the trainees' heads, and these choices were theirs and theirs alone. Added to that were years of exploration, fights, and escapes, Years filled with bitterly observing as immortal races battled against each other, squandering the aeons given gifts. Years wasted, desperately trying to stop the tide of darkness that threatened to drown out the light of civilization. All the while, more and more of their kin fell to their enemies. Ithilia huffed again, eliciting a groan from his nearby friend. "Can you please shut up?" The blonde mage glared at his companion as he stowed a book in his backpack. Nishan Zul was a proud man, even if he looked a bit silly with his blonde locks constantly trying to escape from an oversized wizard hat that he was wearing. It was the only deviation from the norm that he could get away with regarding clothing. The rest of his attire comprising of a worn leather doublet, pants, boots, and a camouflage cloth. "I could, but I won't." Ethan grinned back. His companion rose with a sigh, his empty hand suddenly gripping a wooden item. Despite its toy-like look, the dagger Nishan summoned was anything but safe, fitting both the role of a secondary weapon and a casting implement. With his class, Dawn Summoner, being a battlefield powerhouse, any speed up was sorely needed. "Is something happening? You seem happier than usual." The battle mage's face twisted in a worried expression, especially since you're on guard duty. "Watching these ants is nothing interesting, you know. Not everyone can just turn off thinking and meditate. Jealous? Gods forbid, you freak." Ethan laughed, happily before turning to the last member of the triad. "How do you feel, Trun?" The mountain of a man grumbled, checking the studded armor and his spear before spewing a single word. "Fine." Trun True Word was the most un-elven elf he could imagine. It didn't matter for his companions, though. They knew that he had their back. "Always full of joy, huh?" The only answer was baleful glare from the warrior. "Fine, fine." The scout raised his hands in a fake surrender. "You people always get on my nerves." Ethan shook his head in disappointment. "So?" The mouth prodded. "So what?" "Don't be like this. What did you notice?" "Spoil sport," Ithilia whispered, shouted, and with fake outrage. "Spit it out before I oust you to the Inquisitors." "Ah, fine. Prepare for entertainment. A battle should happen soonish." Under a double glare, Ethan visibly withered before elaborating. "See those brown clouds?" He pointed at the horizon. "The dust rises when enough people stop their way through the wastelands. With the amount we can already see, I can pretty accurately predict 2 large contingents of troops marching towards the oasis. At the rate they're moving, it'll take them about 3 hours to arrive." Ethan scratched his chin. "They're coming from different directions, though, so we may have a 3-way fight." "How do you know they are armies, though?" "Oh, please. Who sends anything other than troops into the wastes?" "I see," Nishan squinted. "Are we joining the fun?" The elven scout slowly shook his head. "Our role is to observe. High Command didn't want us to do anything else. They also asked us to protect the maiden's benefactor. True. Still, it would be an abandonment of duty to do so." "A shame." The blonde page twirled his dagger again and again. "Have a few spells I need testing. The flesh is the best judge of power, after all." His lips rose in a cruel smile. The rest of the day had been spent in waiting, the elven triad using this time to prepare. Even if they weren't planning on fighting in the foreseeable future, it always paid off to be prepared. Hours passed as the trio observed the nervous preparations of Silver Oasis people. They also had to glance at the dwarven mercenaries that its leader employed. "I heard about those traitors," Ethan spoke with disgust. "They sell their skill to the highest bidder when their home is under siege. How dwarven holds can stand their existence, I cannot fathom." "Don't be so judgmental. They aren't joining the defense because other clans won't let them, not because they don't want to," the mage reminded. "These guys are probably a part of either Outcasts or Oathbreakers, the lowest castes. Even speaking with them is a crime for the normal dwarf. When there's a will, there's a way. Say what you want, but it's not always like that." The pair glared at each other, their fists curling up. It was a tense few minutes, only disturbed by Trun's words. "Enemy." "What are you talking about, big guy?" Ethan's words died in his throat as he noticed the figures coming over the nearby hill. Zombies, skeletons, and a few ghouls. Undead. All of them dressed in Gay in our kingdom's colors and blue flame liveries, marching together like an army, not running towards the warm flesh waiting on the other side of the makeshift moat. Trun growled, and Nishan whispered with a cold anger. "So the rumors were true. Those fools really are using dark arts. Rage dead, intelligent undead at the helm. Where's the controller?" He squinted. "Bah, there's not one living person in the detachment. The ones leading them are undead mages. History repeats itself." May Ion curse them, children playing with fire. Before Nishan could continue to breathe the foolish humans, Ethan whispered back, I have more bad news. Light's mercy, what now? Observe, the scout pointed towards the other hill. Seconds passed in silence, as soon more figures surged above it. Unlike the contingent from Gaynard Kingdom, this group was less organized, with large abominations and inhuman corpses towering over lesser dead. The soldiers were, however, more truthful to their nature, as they ignored the competing force and sprinting downhill, eager to taste living flesh. Something that undead mages from the Gaynard Kingdom seemed to loathe to happen as their troops immediately clashed with the wasteland force. Everything happened in eerie silence, cut short only by the sounds of bone-hitting flesh. Why are they fighting? The mage asked, confused. Doesn't matter. The humans are sallying forth. Ethan grinned before noticing something. Thrice's cursed betrayers. That's a lich. His friend's face turned cold and hateful as they too noticed the enemy commander. The antithesis of life, Nishan murmured, his grip on the dagger growing stronger. It needs to die, Chun spat in short sentence, hoisting his weapon and shield. Ready? He asked with a grim resolve. Wait a moment, Ethan ordered, his earlier exuberance forgotten. Break mana flares. We may fail, but the reinforcements will come. The triad took out small blue crystals, no bigger than an adult's pinky. They crushed them at the same time, sending a jolt of invisible energy through the ether. Nobody was any the wiser about what happened, though Uno cursed loudly when an invisible taut cord snapped near his ear. That was what it had felt like, anyway. It was a signal, a line of communication that allowed most devoted to ask for help, while at the same time carrying a deeper meaning, information about those lost fulfilling their duties. No words or notes could be sent, just a short blip on a radar. Tended by Ion's priests, a single response was meaningless. All it meant was that another elf had just paid the ultimate price for the good of the world. Two appearing at once meant a powerful enemy had appeared and that an investigation was needed. Three meant that the enemy was at their gates, that the dead, or worse, were coming for the unspoiled lands, and the ones sending the reinforcement signal were unlikely to survive. 3 broken flares meant that a reaping was needed, and if there was anything that the theocracy elves had learned through the years, it was how to find and destroy their foes. It was carved into their flesh, burned into their souls. 100,000 sacrifices had taught them well. Amongst the bloodthirsty hunters, the inquisitors were those who embodied the concept of unrelenting zeal, becoming unstoppable dogs of a destroyed god. Hundreds of figures surged through the normally calm halls of the temples. Their weapons were being prepared and the troops mustered. Prayers to God of Justice echoed off the walls as the olden constructs hummed to life again, prepared to carry the warriors into battle. Theocracy was going on to war. Near the oasis, 3 friends nodded to each other, their weapons at the ready. Unflinching, they turned to the battlefield where the living and dead clashed. Their blood was boiling. As servants of the light, they knew their duty. They knew that a rational choice was to wait. But the most important thing they had learned through their years of hardships was simple. The honor trumps duty. Hunting dogs of dead gods screamed in defiance as they ran towards their doom. Somewhere, a 2-headed goddess was laughing. End of chapter. I'd quickly like to thank the T5 peeps: Cold War Boomerwaffen, Sevaren Serberous, Bushmaster 177, HenryTheRed, Casper Arnholtz, Cold War Boomerwaffen, Elijah Silvercross, Dragzoon W.R.E, and Sevaren Serberous. Thank you very much.